Right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Grace Ndunge, and this is the show where we talk about, how to make things possible, how to make way for possibilities of a good society, of a good environment, of good health for all of us in the community. Before we begin, I want to say Happy International Youth Day to all the youth and the youth at heart, of course. This is the day where we celebrate and remember the youth. And in today's show, we want to discuss, the main theme of today's, of this year's International Youth celebrations. And that is the theme Intergenerational Solidarity. How do we create a world for all ages? That is what we want to talk about today. And to talk about this, or to have this discussion, I'm joined by some very good and interesting panelists drawn from various organizations that work with the youth and that are also part of the Make Way program. I want to invite my panelists to introduce themselves, and I'd like to begin with Dr. Pauline Wanjiru. Dr. Wanjiru? All right. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Pauline Wanjiru, and welcome to this show. Next, we have Victor Mugambi. Victor, good morning. Very fine. Right. Thank you, Victor, for joining us. And then finally, we have Vilda. Vilda, good morning.
How are you? Okay, my name is Vilda. Very well, Vilda. Welcome to the show. My name is Vilda Atieno. I'm a youth panel in the Make-Way program. So, the youth panel, we represent youth in all their diversities as we envision in the Make-Way program, whereby we envision as a return for all persons. Just to add, I identify as a person with physical disability. Thank you so much.
This show is brought to us courtesy of the Make Way program. And maybe before we go, start talking about the youth and how the youth need to be embraced in all parts of the society, let's learn a bit about the Make Way program. Victor, what is this program all about, and how do people participate in the Make Way program? Victor, can you hear me? Oh, yeah, please. All right, go ahead, please.
Make a program is a five-year program, and its main aim is to break down the sexual and reproductive health rights barriers by promoting a new way of looking at SRHR issues. That is through an intersectional lens. So this means that we are looking at the various vulnerabilities that people have and how they overlap to make to bring about discrimination through the vulnerabilities that someone may have. It also provides the organization. It provides a way of looking at issues in terms of an individual and how they are really not being discriminated through the various attributes that they may have. So Medway has five consortium partners. There is ESO, there is Mama Africa, the Circle of Concern and Women Theologians, there is Forum for Africa Women Education with Power, and there is Ilya, the local person of course for families, this education and community services, and then there is WEMOS. So the program receives funding from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through their embassy, of course, in Kenya. And the program is being implemented in Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Zambia. So the main focus of the Medway program is to promote SRHR and looking at SRHR issues on the UNESCO through an intersectional lens. So intersectionality, for those who may not understand, looking at individual experiences with oppression and discrimination. What do I mean by this? So take for instance an individual, there are things that that expose them to discrimination, and these things are what we call vulnerabilities. So we must look into account every marginalized these individuals, maybe based on gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or physical characteristics. All these are attributes that put someone at and make them vulnerable to oppression and discrimination. So generally, that's what Medway is all about in a nutshell.
Right. Thank you, Victor, very much. I like what you said, that Makeway is about providing a new lens, or providing an opportunity for people to look at things from a new perspective. Because unless we change the way we are looking at things, then yes, we don't make a lot of headway and have any impact in our society that is changing very fast on a daily basis. And today, one of the main things that we're going to be talking about is being a youth. We are celebrating the International Youth Day, and this is a day that is celebrated all over the world, not just here in Kenya. But my question to Vilda, why is it important for us to celebrate the youth? Or why is the International Youth Day a necessary celebration for the world?
Very important day for us in the country. For example, one of the key things that we're looking at, we are celebrating the role of young people and how they are contributing in tackling the global challenges that we face as a country. It's also an opportunity to raise awareness of the challenges we face. So when we celebrate this day, we also celebrate and reinforce the achievements of humanity. What have we done? Where are we now? And what are the challenges that we still face and we want to reinforce and we want to bring change in the future? So celebrating the International Youth Day is also a way of bringing up and showing the youth that despite us being the largest percentage in the country and in the world globally, we need to celebrate it and our roles and the impact that we brought.
Years old, and yes, we need to celebrate the role of the youth and everything that they do. Daktari, Dr. Pauline, what do you think? Why is it essential for us to celebrate the youth? Excellent. The voice of the young people needs to be heard. It needs to be amplified. Victor, do we really need to celebrate International Youth Day?
Yes, of course. For me, International Youth Day is a very important day, especially for us youth. For me, it's a day of awareness, an international day of awareness. It helps recognize that youth across the globe are actually present, and it's actually a group that is there, it exists, and also empowering the youth to make positive contributions to their communities and nations. So for me, it's like a trigger. It triggers youth to start thinking that they can step into the opportunities, step to make sure that they provide positive contributions in their communities and nations.
Right, that's very true, because I mean, in today's world, everybody must pull their weight, quite literally, and it's always been like that in the society. Exactly, you know, everyone has always had to pull their weight, and for that to happen, we need everybody to, you know, to engage the youth. Reverend Dr. Pauline, why should organizations, businesses, and institutions engage the youth today in supporting, you know, and how can these organizations support the vision of the youth as they engage them?
Instead, they need to listen to them, engage them in a meaningful way where they listen with respect, hold their hand, in other words, model, and then give them the opportunities and let them grow and grow their skills.
Very true. And one of the things that
happens, and Dr. Pauline, you brought it out very well, is that organizations and the society somehow has a way of muting the youth. Vilda, in your words, how do you think businesses, the society, organizations, even churches, how do you think they mute the youth, and what do you think should be done to amplify the voice of the youth?
I believe by giving them an opportunity to be leaders and to bear leadership position is a way of helping this. So, lead.
Right. Victor, would you say that the youth are, and if so, what can be done to push them, you know, to have more youth leaders or youthful leaders, if I can say that?
For me, I think youth are very capable of leading because I like something that the former Director General of UNESCO said about young people. You know, young people are not only the future, they are the future, they are the present, they are the most connected, they are the most outspoken, and they're also the most open-minded generation that the world has ever seen. So if we can actually tap into this, the fact that youth are outspoken, the fact that youth are open-minded, this puts them in a position of leadership automatically, first of all. You know, if we breed accountable leadership in youth and investing in youth leadership, in we cannot experience some of these problems that we experience right now. For example, there's an example I usually like using. When you ask a youth or a child, let's say an adolescent, why they would want to get a public seat or a political seat, they'll automatically tell you because they want to get rich. You can imagine that is the amount of mentality that has been put in the youth, that when you get to a political position, you're going there to get richer. So if we invest heavily in building leadership in youth and actually changing their minds and tapping into their mentalities, when they transit now into adults who are actually breeding other we will not have such world problems that we have right now. So I think it's a good thing to actually build leadership in youth and ensure that we invest heavily to ensure that youth are actively participating, which is their right at the end of the day.
Right, thank you very much, Victor. Very informative. It's important that we celebrate the youth, but even more important is to make sure that we inculcate the right thoughts about leadership and all these things, because as it happens, we have taught the youth some not very positive things, that if you want to be rich, you need to be a leader, because the leaders at the top have probably not been doing the right thing. And we just finished the elections, and we'll be talking about how the youth have participated and the impact, whether we have any youth in power right now or getting into leadership positions in the next few minutes. Remember that this conversation is going on live on Facebook and also on YouTube on the Cheshire Disability Services page. Let's go there. If you have a comment, you can place your question there, you can place your comment there, and we will be looking at it. The hashtag we're using this morning is hashtag Make Way for Youth and hashtag Inclusive Community. Inclusive Community, hashtag Inclusive Community, and hashtag Make Way for Youth. That is the hashtag that we're using for this conversation. As we move on, I'd like to engage now. Father, I want to talk to Victor again. And Victor, this program, the Make Way program, has really been on the forefront of making sure that the youth have a very meaningful engagement agenda. What are some of the measures that the Make Way program has put in place to ensure that the youth are rightfully engaged?
I'd like to answer your question, but by looking at the structure of Make Way. At the top, there is the country coordinating group that usually coordinates all activities and running of the program in Kenya. Each country has that. So the first thing that I really love about Make Way is that at the country coordinating group, there's actually a place for youth. Some of us youth are actually in the country coordinating group, and we have voting rights. When it comes to that, our decisions are hard. We actually make decisions when it comes to program delivery and how Make Way is going to be implemented in the country. So that is one thing that I really love on how it really enhances the voice of the youth. Number two is Make Way works to promote youth-adult partnerships. We sit together with adults and reason together and come up with solutions. Yeah. So youth-adult partnerships in Make Way is one way of promoting youth participation in the program. When we voice out our issues, it's actually taken into consideration, and we can move ahead as one. Yeah. There's also capacity building. Make Way really has a heavy capacity building on youth. And since Make Way is youth-centered, it really ensures that the youth are capacity builded well. And most trainings are usually focusing on us youths, and we are given the majority of opportunities to attend some of these capacity building forums. There's also the youth panel. The youth panel was developed as a way of mainstreaming meaningful youth participation. It's one of the decisions that were made, and I feel that really promotes meaningful youth participation within Make Way. And this youth panel also have double voting right. I think Vilda will be in the best position to speak about this, but they have actually double voting rights when it comes to making decisions within the country coordinating group. Yes, thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Vilda, what do you have to talk about? You know, you have some information to add on to that Victor and you.
Yes, I have some information to add about, and when Victor was talking about the double voting right, I can attest that it is true that we do that, and when it comes to decision making, we are given a priority, and we are the first people that are considered before a decision is made. We are the first people to have, what are we saying on this? How does it affect us? And what impact is it going to have on other youths, not only us, but the entire youths in the whole country? And then looking at the intersectionality approach that Mekwe makes use of, and that has been really invested on. So the intersectionality approach enables us that all the youths in all their diversities have well been represented, whereby we don't.
Yes.
You look at only a youth the way they are, but then the intersectionality approach enables the representation. So I think about the intersectionality approach, whereby a number of youths have been looked into in the Makeway program, and being a youth panel and having that double voice enables us to make the right decisions.
Right, thank you very much, Vilda and Victor. It's good to see a program that does not do tokenism where the youth are concerned, because a lot of times, you know, partners walk in and give us programs, and then at the end of the day, you know, we just give tokenism to the youth. And on this day, we are saying that no more tokenism to the youth. They need to be fully involved. And Dr. Pauline, in line with today's theme of intergenerational solidarity, creating a world for all ages, and your expertise in engaging people across different generations, what do you think is missing out by over-relying on either the older generation or the youth and vice versa? What are we missing out?
This is a very good question, and it is one that must be answered well for us to be able to continue with meaningful engagement or meaningful conversations between the two age groups. For me, the two voices are very necessary. The voice of the elder people is very necessary because they have been where the youth are, and they have now moved from where the youth are. The tendency of that group is to think that the mistakes, the way they would like to deal with the mistakes they made, is to push the youth harder and shield them from making those mistakes. And therefore, they imagine or they refuse to engage with the reality of the young people. On the other hand, the young people are young. They have never been old. So they don't know what the old people are talking about when they talk about of their days when they were young. Therefore, the two groups exist largely with suspicion, mistrust, and things like that. When we do not engage either of them, we continue to grow the gap between the two age groups, and we continue to become counterproductive. Because what we want to achieve for the young people, they then realize that we are not engaging them, and they block. They don't want to be part of it. And I think that has been very visible even in the current state where we are in our elections. When we also leave the young people on their own and they do not engage with the old people, is that they also may find areas in their life where they are stuck and they may not know how to move forward. So for me, the two groups need to be in constant engagement, constant conversation, whereby the elder group is honest. Let them not create an to be very honest, so that the young people who are struggling realize that what they are going through is normal. It does not necessarily have to determine where they will be tomorrow, but it in a way can lead to where they will be tomorrow if it goes unchecked. And I'm talking particularly of young people who are struggling with the mental issues of relationship, issues of self-identity, and issues like that. So the reality is that when we do not engage the two groups, when we just deal with one group, we miss what is the real situation. We miss the reality. We miss the gist of where we need to be going. And therefore we must constantly remind ourselves that each of these groups is important. Each of these groups has got something to offer. Each of these groups is needed for us to make way forward to where we want this nation or this world to be. And the voice of the young people, I can give one example of young people, old people thinking that young people are lost and they need to be found. And young people say, we are not lost, we are not in darkness. And the talk was how to get young people from social media, from the internet and all that. My position has been consistent that in the digital world is both positive and negative, and us as the elder people need to capitalize on the positive side of digitalization. We need to see where we need to be putting more emphasis in terms of instead of just saying the negative side of the digital world or digitalization. Instead of that, we look at the positive side. And one of the very positive sides is that during COVID, people could not meet physically, and people had to find ways of meeting. It was the net that helped people to connect. Social media, which is very much common with young people, is one way to derive information within a very short time to a very big group of people. Therefore, in my own opinion, if both adults and young people came together and they began working together from a point of understanding and building bridges, then there will be better use of these digital platforms, and there will be better use of that knowledge to enhance, to grow each other, for example, to mentor or to model, and young people would benefit more, and also the elderly generation will realize that it is not necessarily a vice, it is a good thing to engage the digital platform in all ways. Therefore, for me, I think more education is needed to show how we can use these digital platforms in a good way, in a positive way, to build relationships, to mentor, and to grow each other, and to bring understanding between each other, other than just looking at it from the negative perspective, as has been the case with the adults.
Very true. The digital issue has been a thorny one between the older generation and the younger one, until we've gotten to a point where everything is going tech. And then all of a sudden we have to start changing our mindset. And just staying with you, Dr. Wanjiru, Pauline, what are some of the examples or times that you feel our intergenerational conversation has gone right?
Yeah, that is the question I really wanted you to ask me, because since 2015, in the World Council of Churches, we have really capitalized on these intergenerational conversations or dialogue, as you may call it. And for us, we began as a way of helping us engage meaningfully with young people on issues sexual reproductive health and rights. And when we began the conversation, of course, there was the standoff between the old people and the younger people, elder people and the younger people, in the sense that the two worlds seemed not to communicate. It's like from the perspective of my age, we were coming to the young people with do's and don'ts. And that just helps the young people broke and not want to listen more. We were also coming from the perspective that because of our bad approach, which we were not aware of, that young people actually do not want to hear from us. Our engagement with the young people has been one of the most successful or good example that we can offer to even other organizations who want to engage young people. Because by listening to one another, we came to realize that one of the things that young people are yearning for is to hear the voice of the elder people. They really want to hear from us our perspective on the issues that they are struggling with. The issues of relationships, the issues of sexual reproductive health, all those issues, they really want to hear our voice. And this is because they have been exposed to so much voices among themselves, from themselves, and they've also been exposed to global voices which may not be necessarily speaking to their own situation. So the biggest cry from that angle has been, we would like to hear from our parents. We would like to hear from our leaders. We would like to hear from those who have been there before us. And what we have seen working is that the older people also beginning to understand that our views and our stereotypes of young people were wrong, and that we did not necessarily understand them, and that what we thought we were understanding is totally different from what they are going through or where they are in life. Therefore, as a matter of moving forward, we feel that the young people have got a lot they want to learn from us, and we must be able to deliver that, as I said earlier, with a lot of honesty and with a lot of calmness and with no judgment at all, coming to the table without any judgment. If people have made mistakes, we need to acknowledge that we too have made mistakes. We need to acknowledge that we too made many mistakes to reach where we are. And that way we encourage the young people not to dwell on the mistakes that they have made, but to find ways and means of moving forward and becoming better than what they have already been. This is my area of expertise, my dear. I can talk forever, but I want to say that we have good examples in the World Council of Churches, and we are continuing to share those examples with other organizations and also continuing to grow the example. As a parting shot, we have a very vibrant movement of young people we call game changers, whom we engage in this intergenerational conversation. I think now the number is going to over 1,000, and we are saying there that it is possible to create gender equity. It's possible to end the gender stereotypes. It's possible to deal with the negative gender norms, and it's possible to create the world that young people want. And it's possible for the young people to build the future that they envision. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pauline. Very insightful. And just reminding us that, what the young people are saying is we need to know, we know where we want to go, but it's good for us to understand where we are coming from so that we do not repeat the mistakes of our elders, and therefore we move forward faster. And I think that is a conversation that needs to continue going on. And good job to the World Council or the Church Council. You're doing an excellent job moving that conversation forward. Now, Victor, we have just concluded the general elections. We still do not know who our president is, but we do know that some of some youth have managed to get into positions, various positions across the country. So, Victor, what do local and global leaders, many of them that are from the older generation, need to know about young citizens, voters, and future leaders?
I think one key thing to note is youth are not a homogeneous group. They're not like a school of fish where you just take them to whichever direction that you want them to go and they just move, yeah? Because we have seen a lot of us expected that youths will be the majority who will vote in this election, and that voter turnout has actually been very low. So this is actually an eye-opener for us to see that we cannot just control what youth do. and we tell them to do this, and we just assume that they're all the same. When we give them that t-shirt or 500, they'll just vote and come and vote for me. One thing we saw is that youth are really becoming smarter and smarter. The turnout in our rallies was really high for us youths. We went for all those rallies, we went for all that, but the voter turnout was still low, you know. So these people need to recognize that youth are not a homogeneous group, and we just assume this is what they need and this is what they want and they're all the same, and we don't even look at their diversities, you know. That is one thing that I think the global leaders and local leaders actually miss to see. Another thing is that we need to stop this notion of older people portraying themselves as youth, you know. These older people are even occupying youth positions in the government, and when they come to talk to us, they tell us sisi kama vijana, and they don't understand what it means and the issues that we need to go through, we go through as youth. They need to go deeper and understand and take an intersectionality approach. They need to look at us in our different diversities, in our different vulnerabilities, what makes us vulnerable to discrimination. That is what they are supposed to look at. Because as a citizen, as a young citizen, I don't expect to vote for someone and they are not looking at my needs. They are portraying themselves as a youth and they are not. They think that when they give us the false promises and they give us that t-shirt or that kofia, I'll go and vote for them, you know. These are some of the things that they need to realize. And one thing I'm happy about is that youth, we are stepping up to become better leaders. We are actually stepping up to becoming wise when it comes to voting, and that is the first step to becoming a future leader. You know, you're not fooled easily, and you can now be accountable and say, this is what I'm supposed to look at, because this is not what I got, and this is what I'm going to deliver for youths. So those are some of the things that I think the local leaders and global leaders really need to know when it comes to dealing with youth.
Right. Thank you. And I like what you say there. Two main things. The youth is not a homogeneous group, so you don't treat all of them with blanket solutions. And the second one is very, very, very practical in Kenya, where everybody says we are the youth, and whether they're the youth or not, it's very, very debatable, because even now we are not very sure at what age people should say they are the youth because of previous utterances. That notwithstanding, it's very important to make sure that we, like Victor is saying, look at what the youth feel, understand their issues, and sort them out. Vilda, would you have anything to add to that, or what Victor has said?
Yes, I want to add on something, and I will say, based on survey, we find that worldwide 65% believe in a better future. And out of these 65% that believe in a better future in the whole population, we find that among the 65%, we find that a majority of them are from 17 years to 24 years who believe in that better future. So what I will say to the leaders is that giving youths an opportunity to lead is the best thing, and giving them an opportunity to make decisions is the best thing. Not sitting there in their positions and expecting them to be part of that decision making, yet the decisions that are made, they are not involved. But at the end of it, maybe picking one or two person who is in the same direction with you, and you say that the youths are there, and they are the people, and they are the leaders there. So just giving youths positions and listening to them and involving them in the decision-making table.
Very true. Thank you, Vilda, for that. Now, Dr. Pauline, we are struggling as a country and just generally in the world to build back better post-COVID-19. How can the government as well as development organizations improve access to sexual reproductive health and rights information in order to enable young people make better use choices and actively participate in decision making.
Wow, that's a mouthful. I think for me, when it comes to the issues of sexual reproductive health and rights, I think there are quite several things inside there. And I realize that if we do not unpack that sexual reproductive health and rights very well, we continue making or repeating the same mistakes or making mistakes which we could have avoided in the first place. First of all, we have spent a lot of time as adults debating on this issue of sexual reproductive health and rights. From the perspective of church leaders, I think our main issue is fear. Fear that if we shed enough light on this area, young people are going to get lost, or they are going to get a green light to engage in sex uncontrollably or something like that. And the other issue on the side of the government and international organizations, I think for them it's also like to see the church leaders are taking too long to come on board, and therefore let us just ignore them and continue with the discussion without them. And the whole tragedy is that whichever interventions then we come up with, they run to the young people, and the young people become the beneficiaries of our decisions, whether they are wrong or right. So for me, I think we need to engage young people. We need to put these things on the table, and we must differentiate serious issues like sexual reproductive health and just what can I call it? Not advocacy. The other one where we just aggravate, or we are just pushing towards some agenda, like pushing towards the use of contraceptives for young people, pushing towards legalizing abortion, pushing towards that kind of things. I think the whole notion needs to be approached from a more wider perspective, whereby we first of all make the young people understand of their own self, their own sexual reproductive system, and then make them understand of where they stand, and also understand from them their world. Because sometimes what the young people are going through, the elder people do not understand at all. They do not understand. There is a complete blackout from this other side. So when we talk like we are talking to ourselves, because the two worlds are two completely different things. So I would encourage that we continue the engagement. We try as much as possible to move together, and where it is not possible to move together, we listen to the voices of the young people, at least to ensure that their lives are not in danger, or they are not making wrong decisions because of wrong information or wrong interventions. And we also work on the issues that are affecting young people. For example, the issues to do with sexual and gender-based violence, which they experience a lot from their peers and also from the elderly folk. We look at the issues to do with the norms and practices in our communities, which continue to affect young people. And then we use those as entry points also to deal with the issues of sexual reproductive health. And for me, I think if we are open enough, this is a discussion we need to carry and keep carrying on to the next level, so that we salvage, we salvage, or we don't repeat the mistakes that we have made when we have made before. When we watch our televisions and we are told that we are leading in teenage pregnancies, then the question for me is, who is to blame? Is it the teenage pregnant girl? Is it me as a mother? Is it me as a church leader? Who is to blame? And is it who is to blame who is important, or do we need to ask what have we done wrong and what should we do right? And that is where the conversation needs to begin, so that we put these numbers we are seeing on teen pregnancy, Kenya leading in teenage pregnancies, young girls and boys getting infected with HIV every week. This needs to be translated into our actions. How do we stop this from happening? What do we need to do? What have we done good that we can do better? What are we not doing right that we can do right? And therefore, we then move together as a team to try and save our nation.
Thank you, Dr. Very true. We need to listen to each other. We need to continue with this conversation. And I like what you're saying, that at some point it seems like, government said church is afraid, and the church is saying government is too aggressive, and there was a gap there. But, from the young people, Vilda, how do you think we can improve access? Dr. has told us, how we can do this from a church perspective, from a government organization perspective. From a young person's perspective, how do you think we can improve access to sexual reproductive health and rights information amongst the youth?
Okay, thank you so much. So, first of all, I will go for the getting the right information. Many a times there is no access because we don't have the right information. And the information we get, maybe the right information many a times is not provided to the youth to get full access to the sexual reproductive health and right. And then I think that the government should be involved in this. For example, the Daktari was talking about the teenage pregnancy, that we say that we are the third leading teenage pregnancy in the whole world. So what are we doing? What is it, the child to blame, or is it us to blame? And many a times we need to recognize this, and we need to find the amicable solution to the challenges that we face and to the problem that we face. And then giving youth opportunity and to make decision on what they want. For example, many a times we are not involved in the policy making processes, and many a times we find that policies in regard to SRHR are made when youth's voices are not heard. At the end of it, we find that these policies are not working out for us. They are not for us because we were never consulted, we were never there when these decisions were being made. But now, when implementation comes, we are the people who are to be involved, and we are the people that the policy is targeting. So giving youth a chance and in decision making, getting the right information, so that after getting the right information, we are able to make the right decision. That will back best to help bring accessibility and also promote the SRHR among youths in the country.
Right. Thank you, Vilda. Very insightful. Making sure that the youth are involved. So it's for the youth, by the youth, not what we are doing now, where the older generation sits down, comes up with something, and then we go to implement it on the youth. It may not work. Victor, as a young man living in 2022 in this country, how do you say or suppose we could improve access to the sexual reproductive and health rights information for the young men in this country specifically?
Yeah, thank you. I loved what Dr. Pauline said, that the issues that we are actually trying to advocate for in SRHR are actually broader than the issues themselves. We need to have that wide perspective when you're looking to this. For example, when she said that she gave examples of issues with safe abortion and all that, yeah, gender expansive persons. It's not. We don't look at the issue directly as it is. We need to go down and trickle down to the youths themselves, because that's where the issue originates from, yeah? Because sometimes we have a lot of biasness and we may not be able to look keenly at what the issue is. And I like the way the Ministry of Health is doing. They're actually going deeper to look at, if it's adolescents, what can we do to enhance adolescent information? They're coming up with toolkit, care package that actually enhance looking at the issue from the source, from the person who is actually experiencing this issue. For example, if we sit in a sitting and we are talking about youth issues and there's no youth in that space, then what are we talking about really? These are some of the things that we need to look at so that we can know when we are giving information, what type of information do we need to give? And this is not from our perspective, but from the youth and adolescent perspectives, from them, what is this that they need. I also feel like we need to advance into youth-friendly sources of information, yeah? Digitization is something that is constantly growing, and we need to tap onto that to make sure that we relay credible information to youth. There are things like applications, there are Twitter, social media, and all that. Yeah, we need to advance into youth-friendly sources of information, because you don't expect someone like me, a youth. I go all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital to get flyers to learn about contraception. It doesn't make sense. The first go-to will be on my phone to check maybe an app on all that. Yeah, so we need to really tap into and transition into digitization and ensuring that we deliver youth-friendly sources of information, which will get to youth easily. Number two is ensuring a good policy environment. We really need to look at our policies, especially policies that are biased and discriminate youth and limit youth to accessing sexual and reproductive health and rights, because this is something that we have really seen, that sometimes youth are not really factored into. We are looking at things, especially when it comes to SRHR. We are looking at things from a moral perspective, from values that we took in 1970s. We are still bringing them into 2022. We really need to look at youth, and they need to voice out their issues so that we can be able to know which is this information that we are actually relaying to them. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Victor. And you're right, the issue of having information more accessible on digital platforms, especially with the apps. I know that the ladies have many apps. I don't know about the men. Victor, is there an app that would help young people access information on sexual reproductive health?
Yeah, actually, that is something that you've really, I had not thought about. There are so many apps. You know, when you talk about SRHR, we only look at women. So I've not seen an app for men that really focuses on the various sexual and reproductive health issues that we really focus on. Yeah, that is something that we should really look at.
I agree with you. It's very important for the men to have access to that kind of technology. I know the ladies, you know, I have several apps myself that help me to understand a lot of things about how you know, my body works and everything. I think for men, that's definitely a gap and something that we should look at, you know, how to bridge that gap. Now, Dr. Pauline, one of the issues of barrier of intergenerational solidarity is the issue of ageism. You know, the fact that, you know, how we as a society expect somebody to behave because of a certain age, and how we treat them because they are a certain age. What are the effects of that?
Okay, I think ageism is a negative thing, whereas age is a positive thing, because we talk about age appropriate, meaning that there's something that is appropriate for a 1-year-old, which is not appropriate for a 10-year-old, or something appropriate for a 16-year-old, which is not appropriate for a 3-year-old. I think that is a positive thing. But when we talk about ageism, we are talking about something that begins to act as a barrier. And the negative thing with that is that it is not taken positively by the person on the receiving end, neither is it positive by the person on the giving end. What we must work against is discrimination of any nature because of age. If something is not
Dr. Wanjiru, can you hear us? We seem to have lost you. Daktari, can you hear us? Daktari, can you hear us? We seem to have lost Daktari, unfortunately. Victor, if you could just jump in and because I don't know what has happened, we can't hear Daktari anymore as she connects back. Victor, maybe you could tell us what's the problem with ageism?
Of course, ageism, from a youth perspective, ageism is a big issue, you know, especially when it comes to a place where there is adults in place, and we as youth are needed to give our input into various things. Yeah, there's a lot of stereotyping and prejudice when it comes to ageism as an issue. Yeah. So I think one key sources of ageism is lack of trust in youth, lack of trust and respect in youth perspective. Yeah. So older people always feel like that young people are incapable of making decisions on their own, and they need guidance, especially when it comes to SRHR issue, which are very sensitive issues. Yeah. It comes from this, but also there's ageism on both perspectives. We also feel like as youth that adults don't understand the current state of ecumenical.com, you know. We don't really understand, they don't really understand what we go through and the sexual and reproductive health and rights that problems or issues that we actually go through. They can't understand. Yeah. So what I think when it comes to ageism, these effects, of course, when we are talking about ageism, there's those detrimental effects that come up because of that. Number one, we find that manuals, toolkits, policies, all that are developed, and then they don't even touch on youth, so they don't solve any issues. Again, as youth, we go into spaces and we create things of our own, and we don't also recognize that experience that is also key in developing some of these things, and then we come and cause a fracas, you know. So I think partnerships and opportunities for intergenerational dialogue actually are the solution. It's only the solution that can come and now cover all these ageism issue. Yeah, we need to promote and vouch for effective partnership and dialogue between youths and adults. We need to listen to each other. We need to accept and trust the decisions of young people and also the adults. We also need to have data, evidence, and youth-friendly research to make sure that we capture everything in science as well. We put it into a scientific perspective so that we can actually get to the root of this. But I think ageism is something that it's easy to curb when we all partner to promote that intergenerational dialogue with sound data and vouching for partnership and accepting each other's opinions. We can really curb this ageism issue. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Victor. I think Daktari is back. Daktari, you can hear us now?
Yes.
Oh, good, wonderful. So I wanted to just conclude on what you were saying about, you know, the impact or the negative effect of ageism, and while you're at it, just talk about how we can create a more equitable and fair world so that everybody is happy and included in it.
Yeah, so I was saying the negative part of ageism. I mean, ageism is negative in the sense that it creates prejudice, stereotypes, and it also creates discrimination. We tend to say